This video is sponsored by the Divine Forge on Kickstarter. Welcome to the series where I show you some of the many methods you can use to build your D&D characters. I make these videos partially because new players might not know about all of the many approaches they can take to brainstorming a new character, and partially because longtime players sometimes get stuck in a rut. Today we're talking about an approach I've used a few times, starting with your character's appearance. This is not the same as starting with a pre-existing image as your source of inspiration, although that's a good topic for another time. In this case, you aren't modeling your character off of a piece of art, but you do have a specific vision in mind for what the character looks like. This also isn't the same as using a miniature as reference, although again, we'll do that another time too. I honestly don't know how common this is, but I know it's something I do a lot, because I'm an extremely visual person. To show you how this process works, I'm going to dive right into the latest example I have of this process in action. At any point during the process, I want you to think about where you might diverge from my conclusions, and form your own interpretation of the character. After my latest video in this series, I spent a lot of time thinking about the druid idea I referenced in that video. One aspect of that character would be that the druid has tattoos all over their body, representing aspects of their culture's lore, history, and magic. I like giving my characters tattoos, I don't know why. I just think it's a fun detail. I played a wizard for 3 years who had tattoos of spells all over his body, like a backup spell book for a few of his oldest or most important spells. And as I was thinking about this druid, I thought it might be kind of funny if the tattoos looked like animals or plants, and then whenever the druid wild-shaped, those tattoos played a role. But nah, I already had an idea for what those tattoos represented and what the tattoos looked like, so I decided that I would not go that route for that character. But the idea of tattoos of spells in the shapes of wilderness and animal tattoos, it got its claws into me. No pun intended. A few years ago, one of my players rolled up a 4 elements monk, and on a level up he got a fish tattoo to represent his water whip ability, so I think that was an influence as well. Had the campaign gone on, his character would have gotten more tattoos to represent more of his abilities. And I like that idea a lot, especially when combined with the idea that these tattoos represent spells. But again, for my druid concept, that character would already have all of their tattoos when the campaign began. They're just learning how to use their abilities, but they're not giving themselves more markings as they level up. Okay, so setting aside the connection to the druid, I wanted to dive into this idea a little bit more. What would it look like, no pun intended, to design a character based on this idea? Somebody who has their spells tattooed onto their body in the shapes of animals or plants or whatever. Well, before settling on a class, I wanted to figure out how I would describe these spells in action. Would the caster just wave their arms and then the spells would glow? Would the animal tattoos move? Would versions of these animals appear in person, like Pokemon? Well, for one thing, there still has to be some sort of arcane implement. A wand, staff, orb, rod, whatever. I mean, they could be a spellcaster who just uses the raw material components, but that's what my tattooed wizard did. I didn't want to just do that again, at least not for this specific character concept. I ran through the ideas for how these tattoos could interact with each arcane implement, and my favorite was a wand. The spellcaster could touch the wand to one of the tattoos and flick the wand, creating a 3D version of that tattoo in the air. Then that image would create the spell effect. An image of a red flower might bloom before zipping to the target and exploding in a fireball. A skeletal hand might appear and then create the chill touch effect. You might notice I started moving away from the rigid idea that these would be images of nature. That's because the idea for this character's backstory started developing. I liked the idea that these tattoos were motivated by things they saw out in the world, things that inspired the spellcaster. And I didn't just want to limit that to animals and plants. I also realized I had a couple of visual influences on the character so far. One of them was the villain of the 2018 God of War game. As the new game was getting ready to come out, I was going back to some of the experiences my wife and I had playing the first game, and this character's design was starting to influence this new D&D character. Indeed, I started picturing this character as shirtless. It kind of became the default idea in my head. The other influence was Ed Sheeran. He had a new album coming out and was announcing tour dates, and I remember the experience of becoming a fan of his during the past 10 years, and watching his arms become consumed with tattoos over time. Now, the next step was to figure out what kind of spellcaster this would be. Was this a bard, or a cleric, or a druid, or a warlock, or a sorcerer, or a wizard? I guess it could be a ranger or a paladin, but I didn't really entertain either of those ideas. Of all those options, I didn't think a bard added much to the concept. It was really close to the idea for the druid that I already had, which specifically was designed as a character concept that would make me more comfortable with the idea of playing a druid, so I'm not anxious to make another druid concept. I don't really enjoy playing warlock, so while the idea could be great for that, I don't think I would go that route. Cleric is a really interesting idea, but I just don't think it's precisely right for my approach. Still, it could be amazing, especially depending on what domain you were to choose. So that left wizard or sorcerer. For a while, I pretty much figured it would just be a wizard. After all, I love playing wizards. Wizards are great. And in this case, it would give me a different way to basically treat the wizard's body as their spellbook. However, I realize that there are some game balance reasons why making your body a spellbook isn't necessarily a great idea. A DM might specifically want your book to be some sort of external, physical object, because part of the core fantasy of the wizard means you have a spellbook. And by not using a spellbook, you don't have that item that can get lost, or that can get stolen, or that you can make copies of and hide around the world. Also, by using a human body, you're kind of limited to just the half of the body you can see unless you go around with 2 mirrors so you can see the tattoos you've somehow tattooed onto your own back and butt and the back of your thighs or whatever. Point is, you've got a lot of unusable real estate. But during the time that I still thought this character would be a wizard, I went on a mission to generate this character's backstory. And when looking for some quick inspiration, randomizer tools are terrific. Specifically, I'm fond of whothefuckismynextdndcharacter.com. It's a great resource to give you a race, class, and usually some sort of backstory and objective or plot hook. It's great, and I plan to do a whole other video where that website is the main source of inspiration, because I've spent many hours over many days just churning out characters based on those results. But in this case, I just toggled through options until I found a wizard, and wanted to see if I could find a backstory I liked. And boy oh boy, I found one. You think your character is cool? My character is a fucking resentful human wizard from the Citadel who was expelled from the Royal Guards. Wow. That is exactly what I was looking for. Okay, so I started fleshing that idea out further. The fact that the Citadel had no other descriptors interested me. It wasn't the Red Citadel, or the Lost Citadel, or the Swampy Citadel. It was just the Citadel. So it had to be something impressive, something almost legendary. Maybe the Citadel wasn't just some walled city or fortress. It's an underground fortress city, almost like a bunker from Fallout. It's a walled city beneath the earth where this entire civilization lives in this Underdark fortress, like Vasselheim from Critical Role, but it's in the Underdark, or at least just beneath the surface, right at the edge of Underdark territory. That place would also probably be pretty cold. It gets cold in caves, so that helps rationalize why he's shirtless. The surface world is just a lot warmer than where he grew up, and that helped unlock the tattoo idea as well. This wasn't just an affectation. This character was getting tattoos of all the things he saw on the surface world, or specifically, the things he wanted to come back and tell the people of the Citadel about. And as he was seeing these things, he was becoming inspired to cast other forms of magic. And in fact, whenever he cast a spell, he might say something like, "I saw a flower that bloomed bright as fire," and those are his spellcasting words to cast Fireball. His spells, along with his tattoos, become a record of his experiences on the surface world, and being out in the wilderness was giving him inspiration for new spells and new approaches to magic. Yes, I've created a character for a game played around a table who gets inspiration from being outside in nature. The irony is not lost on me. So why was he cast out? Well, at first I thought maybe he had smuggled some spellbooks into the city. Maybe it was the inspiration of a place like Vasselheim, but I like the idea that the Citadel severely distrusts magic, so just having spellbooks would get you cast out. But I wasn't wild about the idea that this character broke the law like that. It made the character ambitious, sure, but again, the spellbook idea was kind of at friction with the tattoo concept. Not totally out of the question. After all, if he was trying to hide his magic, he might tattoo it on himself to keep his secrets. But I still just wasn't sure where he even got the spellbooks, which, I don't know, that might not matter to you, but it kind of felt like a plot hole, even though I hate that term. How did this random person get their hands on spellbooks? There's definitely some strong potential for a story there, but it just wasn't what I specifically wanted to explore with that concept. You might feel differently. But more than that, I remembered another character cast out of an underground community because they learned magic. Clarota. And in that case, part of what was so compelling about the character was the idea that he didn't choose this. That makes a world of difference. Was this somebody who smuggled spellbooks into the Citadel because they wanted to learn magic, and then he got caught and exiled? Or did he just develop these powers and get cast out? Well, the answer to that informs the last question from the backstory prompt. If this character is resentful, what form does that take? Are they just bitter and mad? Do they want revenge? Well, again, I really like the idea that these tattoos of all sorts of things the character sees on the surface world are meant to remind them of things so he can go back and tell the people of the Citadel about the surface world. Which means this character thinks he'll be welcomed back at some point. And this is where the Clarota influence is undeniable. I just really like the idea that this character specifically believes that someday he will be needed, that the people of the Citadel will say, "We were wrong, and you were right, please save us." And he won't look down and say no, he'll do it. He wants to be wanted by the people of his homeland. He wants them to need him badly enough to take him back. And he just knows it'll be a matter of time until the Citadel is eventually challenged by something it can't stop. So all he needs to do is gather more power and notoriety. So when that day comes, the people of the Citadel will know about him, even in their remote isolation. Which means he needs to live long enough to get to that point. So he needs to team up with some adventurers so they can all keep each other alive. That's something that's important to me these days when I create characters. I like to make sure there's a justification for them to join up with an adventuring party of strangers. So based on everything I said so far, I decided that this character should be a sorcerer. I don't make a lot of sorcerers, but it feels like the right choice for this character. So what would their sorcerer's origin be? Well, I'm sure there are lots of folks typing wild magic in the comments section, but I think you can make a case for just about any of them. The aberrant mind could make a lot of sense for somebody living in the Underdark, potentially very near the influence of mind flayers. If the city is religious, like Vasselheim, which it might not be, but if it is, Divine Soul could be really interesting, because in theory the character should be beloved, but the idea that they distrust arcane magic so much that they'd cast out someone who could also cast divine spells is really fascinating. Draconic Bloodline is terrific, you can never go wrong with that, especially for someone who grew up in a cave. Maybe the Citadel is built on top of a former dragon's lair. But if I went that route, I might want the dragon scales to be hidden or not particularly visible. Remember, I still picture this character with a lot of exposed skin. Shadow magic would make sense, though it wouldn't be my preference. And of course, there's always wild magic. Not only is it terrific fun at the table, but it also makes it canonical that this character couldn't control their magic, which helps explain why they were cast out. In all honesty, I'd probably go with Divine Soul for this character, but you could make a strong case for any of the others as well. In fact, it might depend on the adventure we were playing. If we were going to be underground, Draconic or Aberrant might be more interesting to me. If we're spending more time on the surface, I'd go more likely with Divine Soul or Wild Magic. My odds of playing Divine Soul also go up dramatically if nobody plays a cleric. I love arcane casters, but I also love being able to heal, so I have a soft spot in my heart for bards and Divine Soul sorcerers. And that's the character, and that's the process. I'd love to play a character like this someday, so I just need to play more D&D as a player. That's honestly the takeaway. And you know what would make that easier? If you went and signed up for today's sponsor, the Divine Forge on Kickstarter. The Divine Forge is a 300-plus page digital product full of content you can drop into your game right away. You've got locations, factions, villains, lore, and adventures. If you want, you could play these adventures as a campaign, taking the party from levels 6 through 9. So it's perfect if you've just played one of these starter set adventures and you want something short to follow it up with. However, you also don't have to run them in sequence. You can pick and choose and use this content in any campaign. Each adventure also comes with digital maps, so you have everything you need to insert these quests into any ongoing campaign. And this Kickstarter campaign is already fully funded. And if you want to know more, you can visit the Kickstarter and download a 40-plus page preview packet to get a sense of the final product. There are only 20 days left by the time this video goes up, so go back the project now so you can get an awesome, versatile, ambitious, and awesome D&D supplement to enhance your adventures. Thank you so much to the folks behind the Divine Forge for sponsoring today's video. Thank you so much for watching. A quick Patreon announcement. I am posting a poll for what videos you want to see. If you support me at $15 a month, you'll be able to vote in the poll. It'll be open for 1 week. If you can't afford $15 a month, well, first you can join at $15 a month and then vote, and then drop your pledge amount to something else. Regardless of whether you do that or not, any dollar amount really does help the channel a lot. There are a few other non-financial ways you can also show your support. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about new videos as soon as they come out. You can join my Discord and hang out with other awesome people like yourself. And you can sign up for my newsletter to get occasional updates about what I've got going on. Until next time, play fair and have fun.